Aarohi Mehta believed her life was finally beginning when she stepped into Daniel Carter's world. She trusted him enough to record his marriage proposal, convinced she had found safety, love, and a future in a new country. 76 days after arriving in the United States, that same trust would lead her into a quiet house where her dreams ended and a hidden truth began to surface. Aarohi Mehta arrived in the United States carrying a mix of excitement and quiet nervousness. She had imagined this moment for years, picturing wide roads, tall buildings, and a life where everything felt possible. Leaving her home country was not easy, but she believed it was necessary. She wanted independence, stability, and a future shaped by her own choices. At 26, she felt ready to begin again in a place where no one knew her past or expected anything from her. The suburban town where she landed felt peaceful and unfamiliar. The houses were spaced far apart, lawns were trimmed neatly, and the streets stayed silent even during the day. For Aarohi, the calm felt comforting at first. It made her feel safe, as if nothing bad could happen there. She rented a small room nearby and spent her early days learning the rhythm of the neighborhood, taking slow walks, and observing the world around her. Aarohi kept her family updated through short videos and messages. She smiled in her recordings, showing grocery stores, quiet parks, and her modest living space. People admired her bravery and wished her luck. She spoke about how free she felt, how different everything seemed, and how she believed this move would change her life for the better. Despite her optimism, loneliness followed her closely. Evenings felt long, and the silence of the town became heavy after sunset. She missed familiar voices and routines. Still, she reminded herself that this was the price of building a new future. She promised herself patience and believed that soon, new connections would fill the empty spaces. Unknowingly, this desire for belonging would soon shape the most important and dangerous decision of her life. Meeting Daniel Carter felt like a sudden answer to Aarohi's growing loneliness. He appeared calm, confident, and well settled into American life. Everything she believed she needed to feel secure in a foreign country. Their first few interactions were simple and polite, yet they quickly became frequent. Aarohi was drawn to how easily he spoke about the future, as if everything in life could be neatly planned and controlled. That certainty made her feel protected. The relationship moved forward at a speed that surprised even her. Days blurred into long evenings spent inside his house, where she felt sheltered from the unfamiliar world outside. Daniel encouraged her to see his home as her own, slowly replacing her rented room with his carefully organized space. Aarohi interpreted this as commitment rather than control. She believed closeness meant trust, and trust meant safety. Within weeks, Daniel spoke about marriage as if it were already decided. Aarohi felt both flattered and overwhelmed, but she convinced herself that hesitation was fear, not instinct. When he proposed, she recorded the moment on her phone, smiling with visible hope. The video captured her belief that her new life had finally settled into place. She saved it as something precious, proof that her leap across continents had been worth it. Her online presence reflected this happiness. She shared glimpses of a future she believed was secure, carefully avoiding details. Friends noticed the pace, but chose encouragement over concern. Aarohi assured everyone that she was happy and doing well. In her mind, doubt felt like betrayal of the dream she had worked so hard to reach. What she did not realize was how quickly independence was slipping away. Each day, her world grew smaller, centered entirely around one person and one house. Love, she believed, required adjustment. She never imagined that speed itself could be a warning, quietly closing every exit before she noticed they were gone. As the weeks passed, the excitement Aarohi once shared began to fade quietly. Her phone, once filled with daily updates and cheerful clips, stayed untouched for long stretches of time. When she did post something, it felt careful and restrained, lacking the warmth people had grown used to. The change was subtle, but it was there. Those who followed her closely sensed that something had shifted, even if they could not explain what it was. Life inside Daniel's house followed an unspoken routine. Aarohi rarely appeared outside alone anymore. Simple activities like walks or errands slowly disappeared from her days. The rooms she spent time in grew limited, and most of her recordings came from the same corner of the house. She told herself this was temporary, a normal phase of settling into a shared life, but the feeling of unease stayed with her. Daniel's presence filled every part of her day. Decisions that once felt small now required approval. Aarohi began second-guessing herself, unsure of what might cause tension. She avoided conflict by staying quiet, convincing herself that harmony was more important than comfort. The confidence she once showed when arriving in the country slowly thinned, replaced by caution. Late at night, when the house was silent, Aarohi turned to her phone for privacy. She started writing notes that only she could see. She recorded dates, moods, and moments that left her confused. Some entries reflected fear without naming it, while others showed her trying to justify what she felt. She believed understanding would bring clarity. Despite the discomfort, she stayed. Aarohi reminded herself of the risks she had taken to be here. Leaving felt like failure, and speaking out felt dangerous. She hoped that patience would fix what felt broken. Unaware of it, she was already documenting the truth, quietly leaving behind traces of a life that was becoming harder to recognize as her own. The 76th day began without warning or signs of what was coming. Aarohi followed her routine quietly, moving through the house with the same caution she had learned over weeks of tension. There were no messages sent that morning, no videos recorded, and no updates shared. For the first time since arriving in the United States, her phone remained completely still. As hours passed, concern slowly grew among the few people who still checked on her regularly. Messages went unanswered. Calls rang until they stopped on their own. At first, the silence was brushed aside as exhaustion or a busy day. By the next evening, the absence felt heavy and wrong. Aarohi had never disappeared without explanation. Inside the house, time stood still. Nothing appeared disturbed. There were no sounds to alert neighbors, no visible chaos. The quiet suburban street remained unchanged, unaware that something irreversible had already occurred behind closed doors. 2 days later, worry turned into action. A co-worker of Daniel's contacted local authorities after receiving a brief and unsettling message from him, explaining an urgent work trip and an indefinite absence. The explanation felt rushed and incomplete. When officers arrived at the house, they were met with an unnatural stillness and a smell that suggested something had gone terribly wrong. Upstairs, in a room carefully kept but eerily cold, Aarohi's body was discovered. The scene did not match an accident or sudden illness. Everything around her appeared intentionally untouched, as if someone had tried to preserve the illusion of normal life. Daniel was nowhere to be found. Records showed he had left the state early that morning. No forward, no explanation. The man who once promised a future had vanished at the moment it mattered most. What had seemed like a private tragedy was now the beginning of a larger investigation, one that would slowly expose how silence had been used as a weapon long before her life was taken. When investigators began examining the house, they quickly realized that Aarohi's phone held the most important clues. It was found tucked inside a drawer, carefully placed rather than forgotten. The device was unlocked, as if she had wanted someone to access it. Inside, her digital life unfolded piece by piece, revealing a story far different from the one she had shared publicly. The first videos showed hope and excitement. Short clips documented her early days in the country and the recorded marriage proposal that once symbolized safety and commitment. But as investigators moved forward in time, the tone changed. The videos became shorter, quieter, and more cautious. Some were recorded late at night, with dim lighting and visible tension in her expressions. There were also written notes saved in a private app. Each entry was dated. Aarohi described moments that left her unsettled, patterns she did not fully understand, and a growing sense of fear she struggled to explain. She never directly accused anyone, but the repetition of certain details formed a clear pattern. control, isolation, and pressure appeared again and again. One recording stood out. It was time-stamped the night before her death and ended abruptly, without closure. The file suggested interruption rather than completion. Investigators believed it was never meant to be found, but rather created out of instinct, as if she felt something was about to change. Her phone became more than a personal item. It was evidence of awareness and survival. Without speaking a word, Aarohi had documented her reality. The careful way her data was saved showed intention, not fear-driven chaos. It was as if she had prepared for the possibility that she might not be believed in life. Through her phone, Aarohi told the truth she could not say aloud. What was once used to share joy now revealed warning signs, turning her private records into a silent testimony that would shape the entire investigation. As the investigation widened, attention shifted from the house to the man who had disappeared from it. Authorities began digging into Daniel Carter's past, expecting routine background information. What they uncovered was a carefully buried history that immediately changed the direction of the case. Daniel was not new to sudden moves or broken relationships. His life showed a pattern of reinvention, each chapter starting in a different city. Records revealed that Daniel had lived in multiple states over the past decade, rarely staying in one place for long. Each move followed the same timeline: a serious relationship, a sudden breakup, and a quiet exit. In 2 cases, former partners had filed reports describing emotional pressure and controlling behavior. The complaints never led to charges, but they were detailed enough to raise serious concern. Daniel's public image contrasted sharply with these records. He presented himself as stable, educated, and dependable. Employers described him as disciplined and calm. Friends knew little about his personal life. He shared only what benefited his image, keeping his past tightly sealed. Investigators now believed Aarohi's experience was not an isolated event, but part of a repeated pattern. Daniel seemed drawn to women who were new, trusting, and dependent on him for stability. His relationships moved quickly, creating emotional bonds before warning signs could be fully recognized. The decision to flee so soon after Aarohi's death no longer looked like panic. It appeared calculated. He had withdrawn money, packed only essentials, and left behind items that suggested he never planned to return. Authorities concluded that Daniel assumed distance and time would weaken the case. Instead, his past strengthened it. Each hidden detail added weight to the evidence against him. The man who had built his life on fresh starts now faced a future where running would no longer erase what he had done. Daniel was located nearly 3 weeks after Aarohi's death, living quietly in a different state under his own name. He had not attempted to hide completely, relying instead on the belief that there was not enough evidence to connect him directly to the crime. When authorities moved in, he showed no visible panic. His calm behavior mirrored the controlled image he had always maintained. During questioning, Daniel denied responsibility and claimed the death was the result of an unfortunate accident. He described the relationship as loving and insisted there had been no conflict. However, the evidence collected told a much different story. Digital records placed him inside the house during the hours when Aarohi's life ended. His phone activity showed movement throughout the night, contradicting his statement of being asleep. Medical findings added further weight. The injuries documented could not be explained by an accident or natural causes. They suggested prolonged struggle and pressure, aligning closely with the patterns uncovered in Aarohi's private notes. Each detail reinforced the conclusion that her death had been intentional. The recorded marriage proposal became one of the most powerful pieces of evidence. Investigators used it to show how quickly trust had been built and how deeply Aarohi had believed in the future she was promised. The contrast between that hopeful moment and the reality of her final days was impossible to ignore. As the case moved forward, Daniel's history of similar behavior was introduced. While past complaints had never reached trial, they established a clear pattern of control and manipulation. Combined with the physical and digital evidence, his defense weakened rapidly. The arrest marked the end of Daniel's attempt to escape accountability. For the first time, the carefully constructed image he had lived behind collapsed. What remained was a trail of proof left behind by the woman he believed would never be heard. After the case concluded, Aarohi's story continued to spread far beyond the courtroom. Her life, once shared casually through short videos, became a powerful reminder of how quickly trust can turn into danger. People who watched her early recordings struggled to understand how hope could disappear so fast, yet her journey reflected a reality many had quietly experienced. Her digital records were preserved not for attention, but for awareness. Investigators and advocates highlighted how technology had unintentionally protected her truth. Every saved note and recording became a warning sign for others navigating new relationships, especially in unfamiliar places. Aarohi's story began to be shared in discussions about safety, isolation, and emotional control. Families of immigrants and young women followed the case closely. Many recognized the pressure to succeed, to adapt, and to hold on to relationships that promise security. Aarohi's silence, once mistaken for happiness, became a lesson about how isolation often hides behind calm appearances. The house where she died was eventually sold. The neighborhood returned to its quiet routine, but the impact of what happened there did not fade. Her name remained attached to a conversation larger than one crime. It stood for the risks of moving too fast and ignoring inner warning signs. Aarohi never planned to leave behind evidence or messages for the world. She simply recorded her life as it happened. Yet those records became her voice when she no longer had one. Her story now lives as a reminder that safety matters more than speed, and that love should never require fear. Though her life was cut short, the truth she left behind continues to protect others, ensuring that she is remembered not only for how she died, but for the awareness she unknowingly created.